All right. I guess it's about time to get started for today's lecture. It won't be very long. We're going to finish up the slides that we didn't finish on Monday. And as you know by now, I don't like keeping my students longer than we need to be here in the classroom because I know that you've got lives, jobs, homework, projects, sports activities. So on days like this, I don't have a problem letting you guys go early. So I don't think there's anything I needed to announce for today. If you happen to hear a weird siren, there's a tornado warning drill that's going on today. So if you hear that, don't worry. We don't have to do anything. Okay, and I think I got everybody logged in so far. And anyone else that pops in, I'll get them entered into the attendance log here. Hey, there it is. I called it. There's the siren. You probably can't hear it, but it's a high pitch whir sort of thing. And anyway, income inequality. That's where we left off. Now, I'm going to preface this lecture today by saying that the statistics we're discussing are from 2018. So they might not reflect today. So I did try to find statistics from today. Anything dealing with statistics, you need to have the most current, the most relevant. Um, when you're writing a paper, you need to make sure it's at least within the last 5 years for the primary sources you're using for that reason, because things do change. So income inequality, Byers and Stanberry, they discussed in your textbook that the middle class in America has been shrinking. The top 1% in America have increased their annual income while the middle class has remained virtually flat, meaning that ultimately they're shrinking. Now, we're going to get into a little bit what makes the upper class and the middle class and what establishes these. But Byers and Stanberry pointed out that the middle class has shrunk by 13% when compared to prior decades. So not only is the income decreasing for the middle class, the number of people in the middle class is decreasing. So we got to look back, and here they looked at between the 1970s all the way to the 2010s. Okay, this is a graph that you find in your textbook showing the average US income. You can see here that the top 1% comprises, they're there in that fourth column, pardon me. And the top 0.01%, that's where most of the wealth is at. Most of the wealth isn't even in the top 1%, it's in the top 0.01%. Here's a graph showing the median net worth of families by income tier. The orange, that's lower income. The green is middle income, and the blue is upper income. And we can see here through the decades, the upper level of the upper class, they have been primarily, there's been some growth there, but they've had a few decades where they kind of remained flat. But if you look down at the middle class, the green columns there, you're going to see that there is a little bump between 2000 and 2007. But other than that, it's virtually flat. That's what they were talking about that we mentioned in the last slide. And of course, the lower income, the lower class, there's been a little bit of increase, a little bit of decrease, but again, it really isn't statistically significant. Now, what's the impact of this? The middle class comprises a majority of the customer base here in America, well, technically in any country, which means that the middle class is who's going to be purchasing most of the products sold by organizations or purchasing services. This reduces the spending power within the market. If the middle class loses either its numbers or its level of income, they're not able to spend as much as they once did. And this has a financial impact on the profitability of many companies that are out there. Unless you're a company that really is custom tailored to the more nuanced tastes of the upper class, primarily the top 1%, but especially that top 0.1%. So what can be done? Increasing the minimum wage at the federal level is something that Byers and Stanbury did recommend. And as of 2018, only 29 states have a minimum wage level that exceeds the federal level. And as of 2009, the federal minimum wage level was at $7.25. And I thought I had found what it currently is. I think it still is there. Let me double check. Let me do a little research here. It's still $7.25. So the minimum wage at the federal level has not increased since 2009. It's been stuck at 7.25. Now, I'm 52 years old. I remember a time when minimum wage was $3.25 an hour. Of course, the purchasing power of a dollar was a lot more back then. I mean, if you think back, and this was before my time, but in the 1950s, like 1951, 1952, a dollar had the same purchasing power as a $10 bill does today. Just think about that. That means $100 was like $1,000, and $1,000 was like $10,000. So there really is, when we talk about inflation, we got to look at the spending power that the dollar or the currency in that country has compared to what it once had. You used to be able to go and buy something for a dollar, and it was actually what we now would spend $10 on. So that's really the issue there. The value of the dollar has decreased. So people cannot live on the minimum wage that was, when I was growing up, $3.25 an hour. People can't live on that. You just cannot do it. So now let's turn our attention to what exactly is considered middle class in America. According to Investopedia in 2024, the middle class is determined by the annual income and the number of adults. So single individuals between $30,000 and $90,000 a year for single individuals is considered middle class. For married couples, that number goes up to $42,430 to $127,300 per year. And for a family of three, so that's a husband, a wife, and a child, or a couple and a child, it's $60,000 to $202,000 a year. That's considered middle class. I think that raising the minimum wage is something that has to be done because of inflation and because people cannot live on just $7.25 an hour. It's just they have to have money to pay for rent, groceries, their bills, and then you still want them to have some disposable income so that they go into the community and go to watch movies or go to restaurants or purchase extra things and clothing and stuff like that. You want people to have spending power. Unfortunately, I don't think that the minimum wage is going to be increased anytime in the near future. Now, let's consider gender inequality and pay inequality together. Byers and Stanbury pointed out that women are generally paid 80% less than their male counterparts. Wow, 80% less. In some states, they are trying to pass legislations to fix this problem, and a few states have already succeeded. So that means a woman and a man, both in the same position with the same job title, doing the same work, because remember, that's the criteria for when we look at gender equality when it comes to pay. These two people that are doing the same job have the same title, same everything. The woman, is she getting paid 80% less, or where in there is she falling? Even if she's 10% less, that is not fair because she's doing the same job as a male counterpart. So This legislation would help to balance that out. So, should women be paid the same as men when employed in a comparable position? I think absolutely yes. It doesn't matter to me the gender or the religion or the age of somebody. If they're qualified to do a job and they're doing the job, they should get paid equally to other people that are getting paid. So either you reduce the pay of those that you're overpaying or you increase the pay of the ones you're underpaying. Equal pay for equal work is ethical management. It is ethical. And as we discussed in a prior week, some companies, they use loopholes to get around this. Remember, they change the job title or the job description just a little bit so they can say, oh, it's a different position. Byers and Stanbury noted that areas like Rhode Island, Boulder, Colorado, and Berkeley, California led the way in enacting legislation recognizing individuals as guardians, not owners of their animals, thus giving animals legal status beyond just being items of property. Yes, we've moved on now to animal rights. Unfortunately, my Zoom window is hiding the title, and I apologize. So, the movement to give rights to animals began during the last half of the 19th century. The Humane Slaughter Act of 1958 was the first law passed to protect animals. And so that would deal with cattle and pigs and lambs and chickens and stuff like that, anything that is being raised for consumption, for food. Animals have been and still are, in some jurisdictions, used to test chemicals, makeup, and other things. Animal testing still does occur. And while we want things safe for humans, there are other ways to test these products that won't harm an animal's life or their health or cause them pain and suffering. Business ethics includes recognizing animal rights and the humane treatment of animals, which includes animals raised for food consumption, along with pets. I have a pet. He is a Chiweenie, so he's a small dog. He weighs about 10 pounds. He's 11, almost 12 years old. I've had him for like the last 11 years. The guy, he's a wonderful little guy. I don't see him as my property. I see him as my roommate, and I've been like that for a long time. He has functions he does around the house. He helps with security. If someone is trying to knock on the door or come through a window, he's going to be barking. He also helps by picking up crumbs that fall on the floor. So he does part of the cleaning if you look at it that way. And then I owe him food, water, taking him out. And I owe him these things because he's depending on me. So, yes, he is dependent upon me for these things, but I don't see him as my property. I see him as a companion, a friend. So, if I see that about my dog, what are my views when it comes to animals that are being raised for food? Well, I don't have a problem with animals being consumed for food, but I think that while they are being raised, while they're being maintained, and while they're being slaughtered, there should be a high level of humane treatment. We don't want to abuse these critters because somebody who's willing to abuse an animal is probably going to be willing to abuse a human being. And so we need people to start thinking, how can I ethically interact with another living creature? And I think that's going to help society begin to become more fair amongst itself. I would like to think. Maybe I'm just daydreaming on that. I don't know. And that really comes to the end of the slides. I told you it wasn't going to be much today, but I did want to pull you guys into class so we had something on Wednesday. Let me go back to Canvas and pull up this week's module. Week 10. So you just have a discussion this week. You're going to be discussing workplace inclusion and diversity. Remember, diversity and inclusion, they go together along with the concept of equity. So typically, you're saying diversity, equity, and inclusion, they're combined together because they relate so intricately. They're like a puzzle. They fit together perfectly. They support each other. You can't really apply diversity without applying inclusion. And you can't apply inclusion and diversity without being equitable. So to do one, you're pretty much doing the other two already. So do your discussion this week. Make sure you get your initial post in tonight. And I think it is tonight that this class is due. Let me double check. Actually, your initial post is due on Friday in this class, which is good. And then your replies are due on Sunday. Make sure you reply to at least two classmates. And the replies need to be about 75 words in length. And if you're offering sources for that person to consider in their thinking, make sure you include the reference and citations. And in your initial post, if you refer to a source, make sure you use your references and citations there also. All right, well, that pretty well takes care of today's class. Short, sweet, simple, to the point. Um, does anybody have any questions before we let everyone go today?
Nope, I'm all good.
All right, thank you, Donovan. Anyone else?
All good, Professor. Thank you very much.
All right, Enos, thank you, sir. All right,
Appreciate it.
everybody. Okay, thank you. And you all, everybody, have a great day and the rest of your week, and I will see you again on Monday.
All right, you too, professors. Thank you.
Take
Great.
care.
See you. Have a good one.
Thank you. You too. Bye.
Bye.